Okay, so hello everyone. I think most people have joined by now. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kira Zumklai and I'm the co-chair. So welcome. Obviously, it's online this year. Unfortunately, we couldn't meet in Edinburgh, which obviously would have been great. But yeah, so we're doing it online, and hopefully it'll all work. The internet will work. Everything will go smoothly. And so yeah, I'll give the floor or the screen to Richard, the Ahfap chair, who will start with the AGM.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the virtual 2020 Ahfap conference. Before we get going, I'm not going to read out all the housekeeping rules. I think Kira has, or the committee have sent out a list of things we'd like you to adhere to. So it's mostly around muting yourself and using the chat bar to ask questions and things. So please do refer to those just to make sure that we all sort of stay in line with each other. I don't need to tell you we are living through extraordinary times, and as a result, I find myself talking to a computer screen rather than standing in front of you all physically in Edinburgh, as was going to be the case before the global pandemic changed all of our lives earlier this year. I'm going to try as much as possible to replicate the usual physical AGM we hold as part of our association's annual conference. However, I appreciate this is not an ideal situation, but as with the rest of our lives, we've had to adapt to the restrictions the past 8 or 9 months has placed upon us. We've emailed out the agenda for the AGM along with the minutes of last year's meeting, which I trust you have all seen. There's also information pertaining to the new committee positions on the website. We also sent out an online vote for the minutes, Treasurer's report and the new committee positions and have had the results back. They've been counted, unlike a certain other election taking place currently. Following on from the formalities, we'll be putting out the first of our online content submitted by our membership. Once I finish the AGM, I will hand over to Kira, who will introduce and lead you through the virtual conference this year. So I want to start with the minutes. I don't think we've had any, we haven't had any questions on those, and we haven't had any contentions on that. So I think if everyone's happy, I think I'm happy just to submit those as they are. And as I say, they've all been voted on, so I think we can just submit those as per our constitution. I'm going to start the proceedings with my chair report and try and sum up the last 12 months of Ahfap. If we can all cast our minds back to last year before this unprecedented global event, to the fantastic conference at the Royal College of Physicians, I, like many, was absolutely delighted with the rich and varied programme of talks, as well as our fascinating keynote delivered by David Ward. All of which left me inspired and in awe of the wide range of work our membership now covers. Buoyed with enthusiasm, I was hoping to really push forward with various things we had discussed both formally and informally as a committee, and with many of you who I had a chance to chat with at the conference. However, little did we know that just around the corner, a global pandemic was on its way to us. So very quickly into the new year, our lives changed, and all those plans and ambitions we had to be put on hold. Sadly, we had to make the difficult decision to cancel the conference in Edinburgh after early in the year travelling up to Scotland to visit various venues, including the National Museum of Scotland, which we subsequently booked. As we travelled back to London, we were really excited about what we had hoped was going to be a fantastic conference. However, we now know it was the right decision to cancel when we did. It was a hard decision that actually left us really all quite deflated. The committee responded by trying to adapt to the situation and look at what we could do in response to this completely unprecedented situation. We realised early on that we could facilitate making available information and support on the website that was and still is being made available to try and help provide information related to our industry and to the membership. I'm pleased we did something, and I'm grateful to those that supplied information on COVID-19. I want to say a special thank you to the web team for doing what they could do to bring together this information in one place. We did initially also discuss and rule out the idea of doing an online conference. This was very much driven by the fact we weren't at that point confident with everything going on we could do this successfully. However, I'm glad to say though, after being offered some advice and support from our membership, that we did a U-turn on this. I hope that the digital content and talks we make available will go a small way to make up for the cancellation of the physical conference this year. On a more positive note, we've now rebooked the physical conference in Edinburgh for next year. The dates for that are Thursday, the 4th of November, with the hope that this will be mostly behind us and that we can put on a fantastic couple of days. The committee will make more information on this available in the coming weeks and months. Although the pandemic and lockdown has somewhat hampered our ambitions this year, the committee has continued the function of running the association's business. We have taken our committee meetings online this year, which has generally worked quite well, and may be in part something we continue to do moving forward, making it more feasible for people who live and work further afield to join the committee, one of the few positives that have come out of this nightmare. More generally, although I'm concerned about where this will leave our profession, there are glimmers of hope. Notwithstanding the latest month-long lockdown, museums are generally back open, albeit with the restrictions in place. We've seen a huge increase in demand for digitised content as a consequence of people unable to get to museums, libraries and archives. So very much showing that what we do quietly has a huge impact in delivering our cultural institutions' strategic objectives. Most of all though, as I've always known, photographers are a resourceful lot, so adapting to an ever-changing situation is something that we do well. I know countless stories of how membership have demonstrated creative thinking during this period. I know from my own team at Wellcome Collection, I've seen portrait sessions taken over Zoom, physical copies of manuscripts being created from digital content to then be rephotographed in the photographer's spare room to illustrate a story on our collection, and much more. I'm sure much of this will make fascinating presentations at our conference next year. As for Ahfap, we continue to grow in numbers and as an organisation, and with Kira taking over as chair and with some new faces coming onto committee this year, I think we're in a strong position moving forward, and the future, I hope, looks bright. Although I am aware that we are still going through some dark times over the next few months, but I generally feel we will get through the other side of this and consign 2020 into the history books. I'm going to hand over now to Ivor, who is going to just go over the financial report and audit. If I can hand over to you, Ivor. You want to put your microphone on?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Presumably everybody now has seen the breakdown of the accounts. It's all fairly straightforward. The only thing that I would mention, in case anybody else does, is the figure of income over expenditure, which looks rather large. But that was purely and simply because we normally put a large deposit down for the next year's conference so that we don't really have a profit. And of course, this year we didn't do that. So that's why that's showing the £7,500 income over expenditure. Otherwise, I think everything is fairly clear on the account. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to field questions. If not, I'll submit them to the membership and hopefully they'll be accepted.
If anyone has got questions, obviously you are on mute. So if you do have questions for Ivor, please put them in the chat. You can find the chat button usually at the bottom of your screen. So if you do have any questions, you can put them in the chat now. I think either we can safely assume that no one's got any questions. If not, obviously we can pick up.
The accounts are pretty healthy, and the bank's pretty healthy at the moment, so we should be fairly set for next year's conference. Yeah, and that's it. This is me bowing out now after, I think, probably 27 years on a committee. So hopefully I will see you all in some guise or other at some stage in the future, but there you go.
Thank you, Ivor. That's fantastic. So I'm now going to hand over to Steve Cole, who is going to run through the membership report for you.
Good morning, everybody. I can report that our membership stands at around 434. This figure 14 up on last year's number of 420 is welcome, but I think not a totally true indication of what our actual numbers are. Why am I so vague about the membership numbers this year? It could be my age, but I'll ask you to give me the benefit of the doubt and accept that it's more difficult this year to know how many of you are not at work, not receiving our communications, or actually haven't wanted to, or maybe are unable to renew your membership. Normally, I have a clear process about membership renewals. I send a reminder at renewal time, which as usual this year was in January. In late February, March time, I send another reminder. If that does not get a response, in June, July, I send a reminder that says, I regret that your membership will be lapsed. As we all know, this year is not normal, and I have not felt it right to send the "you are lapsed" notices to late players, many of whom have been members for a long time. The 2020 membership year has been extended to April 2021 due to the current situation. After that point, I hope that we will have a clearer idea of who is still a member. I'm standing down as membership secretary today, and Richard will announce shortly who will be taking over the post. This will be a gradual handover, and some of you will be hearing from me in the near future as I am sending out another round of reminders to people who have not responded to previous ones. I am aware, though, that the unknowns that I spoke of from earlier in the year are still difficult to know, particularly now as we enter another period of lockdown. Sadly, some members have left this year for varying reasons, but the good news is that we have new members joining. I spoke last year of our continuing rise in membership from image makers beyond these shores, and I'm happy to report that we now have our first member from Australia. We also have members join from Bulgaria and Italy, and they too join members from Austria, Belgium, Canada, Holland, Iceland, Norway, and the Republic of Ireland and the USA. Corporate memberships continue to make up the majority of our membership, with personal memberships our second largest category. Based on the figure of 434 that I gave at the beginning of my report, for those of you who are interested in statistics, here they are. 309 have corporate memberships, which are 71.2% of our membership. 69 personal memberships are 16% of it. 17 retired memberships are 4%. Student memberships are 5 in number and 1.2%. 2.3% are honorary members, and 24 commercial members make up our 5.5% of membership. As I stand down from membership secretary, I'd just like to say how much I have enjoyed working with all of you, and I offer my very best wishes for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. That's great, as always. As I said earlier, there are some new faces coming onto committee today, and we have already done, as we've already done the voting online, it just leaves me to read out the names of the new committee members and also announce a couple of changes within the committee to new positions. So I'm going to start off with Dave Green, who takes up the position as web officer. Dave, if you are around, you want to say hello, feel free to do so. If not, don't worry, I'll give you a second. I don't know if you have to unmute him, Kira, we can do that himself, I suppose.
Hello, I'm here. Thanks, Richard. But I'm in the car. I mean, I'm not driving, I'm being driven, but I'm getting you and everyone else in fits and bouts on 4G.
Brilliant. Well, welcome, David.
Thank you.
And the second position, Sarah Duncan, who will be taking up the position of Minutes Secretary. I don't know if you're around, Sarah. If you are, do you want to say hello? No. Okay. Ivor, I can't hear you. You're trying to say something.
Sarah's on the chat, says hello.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Hello. Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. And then we've got Jason Canding, who can take up the position as Event Support Officer. Jason, are you there?
Like a seance, isn't it?
Yes. Is anybody there? Okay. Well, anyway, welcome, Jason, if you are there. And then finally for the newbies, Mary Freeman, who takes up the position of Membership Secretary. Mary, are you there?
Hi guys, yes.
Hey. Hello, Mary.
Yeah, I'm joining from the National Collection Centre in Wroughton. So the Science Museum team are down here this week. So yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very much looking forward to getting involved.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just some juggling around within the committee. So we've got Simon Barnes is now going to be taking up the position as treasurer. So I think most of you know Simon. If you want to say hello, Simon, but don't worry if not. There he
Hello.
is. Hello. And then Claire Collins is going to be carrying on, thank God, as web support officer. And I think that's all of us. So well done, all that. And I do want to say a special thank you to Steve and Ivor, who are obviously both stepping down, as I've said. Both done an incredible job over the years, and you're going to be sorely missed. I just wish I could take you down the pub now and buy you a few beers, but obviously we'll have to wait for that one, I'm afraid. And also not forgetting Ian is also stepping down today off the committee after several years. So again, thank you, Ian, for your wonderful work. And then I want to just welcome everybody. So welcome aboard to the newbies. So finally, just to finish off, sadly for me anyway, Kira stepping up today means that I'm going to be stepping down, which is going to be hard, as I've absolutely loved the last 4 years leading the committee. I've been lucky in overseeing 3 fantastic conferences in Cambridge, the British Library, and last year at the Royal College of Physicians. I've also been lucky in representing Ahfap last year's 2 and 3D conference at the Rijksmuseum, as well as being on their conference advisory committee. Most of all, though, I'm grateful for the friends I've made on committee and with many of you as members. Stepping down to come at the right time for me, as the challenges of running a very busy department are bigger than ever now. I'm also a trustee director of the Wellcome Pension Fund, so my focus is going to be on those things for a while. And I'm also hoping to move to Norfolk next year, so where I'm planning on resurrecting my passion for landscape photography in my spare time. So I'm going to be busy. That said, I'm going to be an enthusiastic Ahfap member, and I will continue to support the association where I can. Kira, I know, will be an excellent chair, the first female chair in 35 years, I believe. That's about time, I think. I know she will bring some new and fresh ideas to the association, and alongside her, the new committee members will, I'm sure, bring their combined experience to bear on running the association. Before I hand over to Kira to take the reins, I just want to say thank you to the committee, President Colin, and all you for the support and friendship over the past 4 years. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Richard. I believe our President, Colin Maitland, wanted to say a few words. So Colin, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me? Am I here? Can you hear me, everybody? Well, Richard's unfortunately stolen quite a few of the things I was going to say, but never mind. I want to welcome the new members to the committee, and of course, thank the people leaving, Ivor and Steve and Ian. And but I want to welcome Kira, who is familiar to you from the conference stage, is now a star of the screen as well. So thank you for coming, all of you. But of course, I've got to thank Richard, and that's the point really of this, because he's been working very hard over many years and has served us well and seen us through some very successful conferences. He's shown decisiveness throughout, a willingness to listen to advice, and perhaps most important of all, the ability to delegate. We wish him luck for the future. Thank you for that. Just one more thing I'd like to say is finally we welcome you, the delegates, in your little boxes, for whom we put on this series of events, and without whom it wouldn't be worth doing. So thank you very much for everybody. Good luck. Thank you, Kira.
Thank you very much, Colin. So yes, that is the AGM. Now that everyone's joined and no one is in the waiting room anymore, I just want to go through a few housekeeping things. Just obviously, we have them on the website and we send them out, but I thought, you know, not everyone has time to look at those things. So as you will have noticed, most of you are on mute and your videos are turned off. That is just to make this stream as straightforward as possible. If you do have questions, please post them in the chat. So all of you should have a chat function, usually at the bottom of your screen. So in there you can chat to everyone, which is how you would ask a question, or obviously if there's someone in the participant group that you haven't spoken to in 10 years and you can see them there, you can message them privately as well. So do make use of the chat function today, especially if you want to ask questions. If you do use the chat, especially if you ask questions to the speakers, please make sure that you're using your first full and second name and not some kind of moniker that you've come up with. So if you want to rename yourself, find yourself in the participant tab. So again, at the bottom of the screen, you can click participants, and when you're on there, find your own name, and then under more, you can rename yourself. So I would just advise you, especially if you want a reply to your question, please use your first and second name, so we can get back to you in case we can't answer your questions today. Then we can at least get in touch via email if possible. Also, as we have said in the email, we're recording this event and hopefully it can go online soon after. So if you know of anyone who isn't able to join today, they can watch this later on. Yes, if you're planning to join for future events, obviously we're running this for the next 3 Wednesdays as well. If you're joining late, as you will have seen, you end up in a waiting room. So please be patient with me. It's me who admits everyone. So it might just take me a few minutes to get around to admitting you, but I will admit you throughout the entire online series. So if you can only join 15-20 minutes late, you will still be admitted. And I think that is it in terms of housekeeping. Obviously, again, thank you everyone for joining online conferences. It's the first time we're doing this, so hopefully it all goes well. Thanks to the old committee members, thanks to the new committee members, and yeah, let's hope that we can have this kind of online event series and make this as successful as our usual conferences. As you know, or you might have seen, next after this AGM, we have a panel where we will discuss recent issues around COVID, how it's impacted us, what mechanism we have come up with to cope with it, what ideas we have and how we can support each other. And the panel is led by Kristen Phelps, who is the still image digitization specialist at Duke University Libraries. And there are several other panel members. Amongst them is Tony Harris, digital media and photography manager at the Government Art Collection, Colin White, a freelancer at White Photography and Digital Imaging, Maciej Pawlikowski, head of digital content unit at Cambridge University Library, and finally, Denise King, photography and imaging manager at the National Gallery. So if I could ask all the speakers and panel members to unmute themselves and turn on, and then I'll give you the screen. Thank you very much.
It looks like we're ready to go. So good afternoon and welcome to our panel discussion, Lessons Learned from a Pandemic, which is being hosted by Ahfap as a part of their 2020 online events series. By the end of January this year, when the first cases were documented in Europe and the UK, the world has been enmeshed in the COVID-19 pandemic. This pandemic has rapidly altered our daily behaviors and given us a new normal. Particularly seminal was the lockdown period, which began in the UK on or about March 23rd and didn't begin to ease until May 11th. The lockdown had a direct impact on nearly everyone in nearly every job, and our industry is no exception. As a profession, we were all forced into a type of agile management to navigate the perfect storm of uncertainty and the need for innovation to keep working. Agile management requires the incremental development of new activities in a flexible manner in which the end, a successful working product, is the best measure of success. The final step in agile management requires reflection by the whole project team in order to incorporate lessons learned into the continued development and success of the project. It is hoped that this panel will provide a breadth of experience from across our membership at Ahfap to assist with the creation of a strategic roadmap of where we have already been this year in order to assist for planning for future events which may require similar strategies. As a note, whilst acknowledging the current situation of events in the UK, this panel will only be discussing what has already happened in 2020 and not speculating on what the future may hold. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel for today. First up is Tony Harris. Tony is Digital Media and Photography Manager, responsible for all imaging at the UK Government Art Collection, current Secretary of the Ahfap Imaging Standards Group, and former Chair of Ahfap. Tony joins our panel today to offer the perspective of small studios. Next, Denise King. Denise first started working at the photographic department of the National Gallery in the early 1990s on a part-time temporary contract, and since 2011 has been photography and imaging manager. Denise joins our panel to offer the perspective of studio management. Next, Gwen Riley-Jones. Gwen is imaging manager at the John Rylands Library, part of the University of Manchester. Gwen leads a team of photographers to digitize collections with standard high-end digital photography, multispectral imaging, reflectance transformation imaging, and 3D photogrammetry. Gwen joins our panel to offer the perspective of studios outside London. Next, Magic Palakowski. Magic has been working in digitization of heritage collection for 15 years, leading a number of digitization projects for Cambridge University Libraries for the past 10. He currently leads a team of 6 photographers and 2 picture librarians. Magic joins our panel to offer the perspective of large studios. And finally, Colin White. Colin is a freelance photographer and consultant, currently working part-time as photography manager of Art UK, managing freelance photographers for their sculpture project. He is also the former head of photographic at the National Gallery. And Colin joins our panel to offer the perspective of freelancers. And I will be your moderator. My name is Kristen A. Phelps. I previously worked at the British Museum and the British Library, and am currently employed by Duke University as their digitization specialist for still image. Please note that we will endeavor to leave time for questions for the audience at the end of the discussion. These questions can be entered into the chat and we will do our best to address them. Without further ado, let's begin our discussion. First off, did your studio have any time to prepare prior to lockdown? And if so, what preparations did you make? I'm going to start with Tony Harris.
Hi everyone. We were already in the middle of quite a complex building move, so I actually had already closed down the photo studio and moved to temporary storage facility to do that. So everything was in half my equipment was in boxes anyway. So it basically meant driving to the store to pick up the editing machines and go home and pack up to go home to edit at home. So yeah, that's my experience really.
Okay, Gwen, what was your experience?
I'm trying to think back. I think we had a tiny bit of notice, but then all of a sudden it was saying go home today. I wasn't actually working that day, so I was on the phone to the team, take home your hard drives, take home anything that's got data on it. And luckily we'd already started to move towards an agile type of working, so we had laptops for everybody with software on. So everyone took home the laptops and got cracking with working. And to begin with, our project photographers were also trying to work from home, but then they became furloughed later on. So myself, the imaging assistant, and the 2 senior photographers all continued working.
Okay, Magic, how about you?
Well, we kind of knew something's going to happen, and there were discussions in the senior management already when from the decision we had about the couple of days to pack up and close the studio. Our main concern was about material and security, because while we have multiple digitization projects, we have lots of special collections items down in studio, so wanted to make sure everything is safe. So we've done kind of a survey, and the other concern was also documentation of the actual locking down the library as well, and for future as a kind of archive we wanted to create, and that was successful. And yeah, in a couple of days we took all the things we could and went into lockdown.
Okay, and Colin, what about you?
Well, personally, it didn't come as too great a surprise. During January and February, I was working in Milan, and it was quite significant difference on how it was being reported in Italy to how things were being reported here. So I had plenty of time to kind of understand that things were going to happen quite quickly. What I did find was a couple of jobs that came very close to the lockdown, in actual fact ended up being in lockdown, and it was actually the client didn't seem to be aware that what was going to happen, and we had to contact the client to make sure that they were still there. They seem to have forgotten about us.
Okay, well, thank you for those answers, and let's move on to question 2. Was working from home an option for you? And Denise, I'm going to start with you.
Hi. It was for some of us. So it really depended on what our jobs were. So it's different for the office staff as opposed to the photographers. And it really depended on what personal equipment we had, because we had a couple of days' notice of the closure. And there wasn't any equipment we could take home with us. So we just had to depend on ourselves and what we had. So for the office staff, we were able to connect to the servers and continue answering emails, cataloguing images, things like that. Photographers were more limited in what they could do. We were able to take home some images on hard drives. So there was some amount of processing that could be done remotely, but it was mainly training, research, things like that. And yeah, a limited amount of work.
Thank you. And Tony, what about you? Tony, you may be on mute.
Oh, is it my turn? Sorry.
Yeah.
It all froze for a second then. Yes, no, working from home has been an option for us for many years. All our systems have been web-based anyway. So email, our collections management system and our combined dams is all browser-based. So all our systems work in a browser. So it just requires you to have a machine that's got Photoshop and Capture One or whatever you use locally. So working home was a breeze. I mean, the most difficult part was actually just getting a lot of stuff home, partially on the tube and partially in my car. So yeah, so it was actually just lugging stuff really. It was the most difficult part from my point of view.
Thank you. And Gwen, what about you?
Yeah, quite similar to Tony, I think. We've not worked from home previously, but just in a chat before the conference started, I was saying it's actually been a benefit to us because our studios are so small. I'm probably going on a few questions, so I'll save the rest of that answer to later. But yeah, the photographers were able to work from home. Our imaging service continued with our stock orders. One of the senior photographers did a lot of work on 3D imaging development and practicing at home with some data we produced. And quite fortunately, we just launched a new digital collections platform. So we have the huge job of moving over things from our old platform to our new platform. So the summer actually allowed for that process to be designed and implemented. And that kept some of the photographers really busy as well. We also took some time to do something a bit more creative and spend some time doing like an image hack and do some creative blog posts based on the collections, which I really enjoyed seeing what people produced, but also I think it's nice to have that time for people to do that because usually we're so stuck in the daily work. And as I mentioned just before, our 2 project photographers did that for a while, and then fortunately were put on furlough. So that means the projects won't be affected, and we can carry on that project work now. So yeah, it worked really well for us.
Okay, thank you. Magic, what about you?
Yeah, similar to what Gwen said, we weren't working from home before really that much. And obviously picture library, 2 people who manage the orders, licensing, and deliver the existing content, they could continue to work from home without a problem. One of the photographers who is also a video maker, he took the camera camcorder as well with him. So then during the lockdown, he could enter the library and do some documentation of the empty library, which is quite exciting. But the other photographers, whatever bits and bobs they had and could finish from home, they did. And that was about it. So we went into teaching and learning mode kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. And Colin, what about you?
It didn't really make much difference, apart from the photography has to be done on location. So for 3 months that didn't happen, but all the other things like the testing, the training went online rather than in person. Testing, creating training documents and videos, image processing, and the movement of files, because we do that all online from home anyway. So that really didn't make much of a difference. The only difference was for 3 months there was no photography because there was no locations to go to.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, were employees sent home with any specialized equipment to facilitate working from home? And I know I've already heard that there were laptops that were sent home and hard drives. Is there anything that you would add to that list? Let's go ahead and start with Gwen.
We had the option to take home screens and things like that after the first lockdown. So before services had resumed, but the very first part of lockdown, no, it was just laptops and the hard drives.
Okay, Magic?
Yeah, similar, just maybe screens, laptops. One person took the cameras and yeah.
Denise?
No, nothing really. Our staff are split into 2 buildings. So the majority of the office staff are in a separate building to those of us who work directly with the collection, like photographic, conservation, scientific, etc. And the office staff are planning a move next year, so they'd all been given laptops. So when lockdown happened, they were kind of prepared, but because we were based in the main building anyway, we didn't have laptops. So we just had to function with whatever we had. And IT weren't particularly keen on us taking expensive machines home, so we had to leave them there.
Okay, thank you. And Tony?
Yeah, no, that's interesting what Denise is saying there, because I fairly quickly took home my sort of NEC monitor because I was able to get stuff that had been packed up into a store and drive it home. But it took me some time to realise that actually in my front room I was actually having, well, with the Mac Pro and the monitor, I was having, that's $7,500 of equipment sitting in my front room that I hadn't realised who was insured for. So that was one aspect. And then when I finally later on was doing some photography, I had even more equipment in my front room, and I still haven't quite found out from HR what the position is on that, but I'm sure it's all fine. So it's all good. The equipment's still here anyway. So, but yeah, it was that. So basically, I took home quite heavy gear. I mean, I already had my work laptop, but physically heavy gear.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what type of work did practitioners do during the lockdown? Let's go ahead and start with Colin.
Well, the Art UK work I'm involved with was ongoing. In fact, the freelance photography part of that had practically finished when we came into lockdown. I think we'd done about 98-99% of the people who were going to photograph at that stage. So there was processing of that. We've also got, I do a lot of work for Google, and I've currently got all their equipment here, and we're testing cameras and new software systems. So a lot of testing going on. And generally just the main bulk of it was actually seeing through the End of the Art UK project, which actually ends for us at the end of this month. So in some ways, lockdown came at the perfect time for that project itself, because it was about sitting home processing the stuff at the time anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Gwen, what about you all?
For us, we were working on various different things. I think I covered a lot of them before, but I think one of the most exciting things was that as part of the migration of the digital collections from one system to another, any member of the special collections team actually got the opportunity to curate collections in the new system. So the photographers didn't just do the imaging support work. The photographers and the imaging assistant were actually curating collections, which was really great to see. And that's a bit of a step change, and that's something that will continue as well as we go on. And I think what was quite interesting to me is how many of the things I thought we would do in lockdown that we didn't get time to do because we were so busy doing other things. So the imaging service continued and was busy. And like I said, 3D imaging development took up a really good portion of time, and was a great opportunity to be able to focus on that. And then, as I've said, the blog post as well, the image hack was absolutely fantastic and really good opportunity to spend some time thinking creatively and making creative responses to the collections instead of just digitizing them, and something we'd like to carry on with as well.
Denise?
Hi, yeah, like I said, a lot of the work we were doing was image processing research. Andrew's looking into digital x-rays for us, so he did a lot of work on that over the last few months. Bit of training, cataloguing images. I mean, from day one, we were still getting requests for images, so lots of distribution of images, and just catching up with a little bit of backlog, but requests are still coming in every day from all through. So we had plenty to keep going, even if we couldn't do any actual photography for the first 2 months.
Okay, thank you. Magic?
Yes, similar teaching, learning. There were a few things like experimenting with the existing content as well, video making or video processing, learning animations as well, using existing content. That was quite exciting. Or 3D modeling, exploring different methods we haven't used before. It just now was the time we could do that. And also learning Envy for multispectral imaging, which is quite advanced and it has very steep learning curve. So that was quite interesting too. So bits and bobs like that.
Okay, Tony?
Yeah, for me, it was really actually quite an interesting process in a way. I mean, I'd already do other work. I don't just do photography, I do design work and website work, and I'm also a database admin for our collections management system. So I had loads of work to do, and fairly quickly realised that I can do everything at home except press the shutter button. So having realised that now, it's quite interesting that actually I can, going forward, basically not spend 2 hours a day on the train anymore. So yeah, I haven't really found it very difficult at all. I have had some, when lockdown eased, I was able to go and do some more photography and also go and make a film as well. So but up until then, I had just loads of work. I mean, I had so much work to do. I just haven't stopped, basically. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is, how did management styles change or adapt during the lockdown? Did management become more of a challenge? And I'm going to start with Denise.
Yeah, the most noticeable change was in communications, which has generally in the past been an issue, I think, at the gallery. As soon as lockdown started, everybody was at home. there were just endless Zoom meetings. Everybody was having meetings. You were constantly seeing people all the time that you didn't normally see in real life. And management did make an effort to keep in touch with everybody. And that's kind of settled down after a few weeks. But what has continued is, for me personally, I used to meet my line manager once a month. We now meet every week, which has been actually really good. And we're part of the collections directorates. And we have collections meetings once a week with all the heads of departments in that directorate. So that's continued. And that's been very good to see what everybody else is doing and just get more information, which really we should have been doing before. But I think people realise now that, yeah, it is actually quite good to talk to each other a little bit more. And hopefully when we go back, that will continue. Maybe not as often, but that's been the key thing, I think, just people realising that we need to talk to each other more. And within our department, we've been doing that. Half the department are part-time, so it's always difficult to get people together for meetings without part-timers changing their days and coming in on different days. So we only do that occasionally when we really have to. But since lockdown, we meet every Monday morning, even the people who are not officially working on a Monday. And that's been brilliant to actually see everybody and talk to each other and discuss things every week. So that's the key thing, really, I think, for us. It's changed.
Thank you. Tony, what about you?
Yes, I think I don't line manage anyone myself, so there was no issues in that direction. But in terms of our management, I think they were very good at communicating with us. You know, we had the virtual meetings very quickly. We within the government art collection, we had 3 meetings a week just to check in and see how people are doing. So I thought it was very good. And the strange thing was that, you know, when I finally get to see my colleagues again recently, it was quite weird, and I didn't feel like I'd actually not seen them, because I'd seen them every day almost anyway. So yeah, so that was my experience.
Thank you. Magic, what about you?
Yeah, that was a big change in communications, indeed. Lots of project meetings suddenly, much more efficient, but many more, and project groups, and catching up with different people, different parties. One big change to our team was the virtual tea times we introduced. That was lots of fun, and I think very important, kept the spirits up through the lockdown.
Great, thank you. Colin, what about you?
Actually, I'm bucking the system here. There was no real change at all for the last sort of like 6-7 years. Most of my work has been done either, not so much Zoom, which is completely new to me. It used to be Google Hangouts. And yeah, most of people I worked with, we did it either sort of like on Google Hangouts or via email. So in actual fact, communication-wise, it's been very little changes for me at all. I will say one thing about the meetings being more efficient if they're online. What you tend to do is, because everyone's listening to everything, you can't whisper something to the guy next to you. So in actual fact, you keep on message and you get things done. And yeah, the meetings we have tend to be 30 minutes and bang, finished. And yeah, everyone knows what they're doing. So yeah, very little change for me.
Okay, great, thank you. And Gwen, what about you?
Yeah, I think going back to what everybody else was saying, very different, quite a few different things. Teams was just introduced just before lockdown for us, which was absolutely fantastic and really helped in some ways with communication, and was a complete nightmare in the other, because you just constantly have a ping, ping, ping in the corner of your screen and various different communication channels going on. I think I was in 3 different threads and writing 2 different emails at one point, and I thought this has got to change. But that was great, because the first few days of lockdown, I spent most of my time on calls to the team, checking they're okay, setting everybody up. And then after that, I found how we could sort of get things in a flow. What I think has been really interesting with our management, sort of from top down, is there's been a real focus on well-being and really supportive to people in challenging situations at home. And the senior managers keep saying, think about your own well-being and don't work too hard, which is perhaps has changed to the normal, but I think, you know, really appreciated by everybody, I think. And in terms of, yeah, sort of online meetings, we're a multi building site. So to have some meetings, you'd have to travel for half an hour to get there across the city. So that saves a lot of time, just being able to meet online, and never mind, like Tony said, you know, the commuting time. Definitely some benefits from that as well. But I would say I noticed personally with managing my own team that I found it harder to navigate or ascertain some of the softer management issues when you talk to people one-to-one that you might pick up on in person. I found that much more challenging through a video kind of call.
Okay, thank you. The next question, at what point did you or will you return to your studio? And was it a full-time returned or a phased returned? So I'll start with Tony for this one.
Well, I am actually sitting in my new photo studio, which hasn't actually, because we're in the middle of a building move. The building isn't actually officially fully open yet, so it's actually, the equipment's just being moved in, and everything's still in boxes from the wider move that was happening before lockdown anyway. So today is one of the first days I've actually been in the studio, and there's going to be a lot of work over the next few months to unpack and that sort of thing. And I think from the good thing about being in a studio here is that I can actually isolate from other colleagues, so I can actually come in and work. And yeah, it seems like I'll be able to come in when I want to, but I'm also under no pressure to do that, and I can continue to work from home if I want to. So, but I'm keen to get in and just unpack boxes, basically.
Okay, thank you. Colin, what about you?
Oh, I've forgotten what the question was.
So this is the question about if you returned to a studio full time or you had a phased return.
Yeah, no, in actual fact, nothing's changed for me because I work from home anyway. I mean, the only thing that changed was at the end of June, we could start going out on location, but that's the only change that happened. No, everything else remained the same.
Thank you. Gwen?
So yeah, so we are still amidst a phased return. So the photographers are in between 2 and 4 days a week instead of 5. And we've had to set up photography equipment in an office because we don't have space for social distancing. So we've got 3 spaces we can currently use. And with the new lockdown, the universities are staying open, so we'll still be going in and working at the same level for the next couple of weeks, and we're going to see how it goes. We had started to think about ramping up the phased return, but actually we got that we didn't know, given the new situation.
Magic?
In July, part of the team came back to support reading services to launch the scan and deliver service. So some people started back then in a building, but kind of working in a different role. Then by end of August, we already had a part-time studio working. Most of the people were back, and we resumed all of the strategic projects. And in September, we resumed the orders as well, and everybody came back almost full time. I think we still kind of on limited access hours to the building, to limited. The interesting thing was also we explored different options because we support multiple institutions around Cambridge in terms of providing the digitization service. We had one project where we set up the studio in situ in the institution where the photographer could be isolated in their own room and carry on with the work, and that was quite successful as well. So we looked at different options for photographers to be working in different locations too.
Okay, thank you. Denise?
Yeah, our return was fairly gradual. I was the first person allowed in to check on our photographic archive. We have an environmentally controlled archive, which is full of thousands of glass plate negatives. And there's currently a building project happening immediately opposite the other side of the corridor. The new accommodation hub is being built. So I persuaded them that it was essential that I go in and monitor the negatives once a month, at least, just to keep an eye. We'd done a survey previous to the work starting. We had to keep an eye on things to make sure that the sensors would go off and you'd get vibration alerts if anything got a bit too hairy. But I needed to go in and check occasionally physically that the negatives were okay. So I was going in once a month from starting at the beginning of April. And then in June, first couple of photographers came back to do some work, and then gradually more people came in and we started working on a rota basis. So rather than trying to keep equipment clean, and we decided to just have one photographer at a time in the studio for that week. Then the following week it'd be a different photographer. And in our different rooms, generally just one person working in each room, whether it's processing or photography or whatever. So we were just kind of taking it in turns, and nobody's been back fully every day yet. So we just go in when we need to. Anything we can do at home, we do at home. And I go in about once a week on average. But we're locking down again as of tonight, 6 o'clock.
Thank you. The next question is, how has your workflow changed? Has your institutional mission changed at all in reaction to the pandemic? I'm going to start with Magic.
The mission did not change. I think it was other around. The mission was driving what we were doing. So in terms of resuming services, for instance, we were prioritizing the services which support teaching and learning. Research was second priority in that sense. This is why Scan, Deliver and Click on Collect services for the library were launched first. Then we went into supporting the research and then opening the library to the readers, and it works. It would work the same way other way around. If we're looking at the next lockdown, luckily we will stay open as we are because we have all the measures in place. We think so far, and it is always the institutional goals and mission is what actually drives the approach to it. So I don't think it really changed. We do, however, try to be as open about content and digital content as we can, and we try to support that.
Okay, thank you. Gwen?
Yeah, I think I'd say things have changed quite a lot. The workflow has changed in terms of our two project photographers are now working in sync with each other. So one capturing on site in the building and the one editing from home. So that's quite interesting, a new way of working. And in terms of the wider institutional mission, during these months, the John Rylands Library has an associated research institute, which over the summer have now combined. So the John Rylands Library will now be called the John Rylands Library, the John Rylands Research Institute and Library. So all of our work will have much more of a focus on research as its primary aim and function. So that's quite good for us in imaging. But like Marcek, there was also a big drive for teaching and learning. So a huge amount of digitisation took place during the late summer and autumn to get things online for teaching, the online teaching. So yeah, I think things have changed quite a lot. And I was also off for a significant period of time in the summer. So our work plan had to be arranged before I left. And I think we're going to keep that in place as well and have a much more ordered set of projects and the way that's kind of communicated to photographers and across the different teams. So I think quite a lot has changed, but for the better, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Colin, how about you?
Again, not really. We didn't really change much at all, mainly because we were working remotely anyway. A lot of the people I work with, one team I work with, we have a meeting once a year in person. And some others, I haven't actually met my colleagues in person for about 3 years. So it's all done remotely by this kind of stuff all the time now in my line of work. So it just reinforced that what we were doing was quite robust in these kind of situations. The only difference was, as Tony said, For 3 months, we couldn't actually go and push the button to take a picture anywhere. But apart from that, no, everything else, it just worked because it was working that way before.
Okay, thank you. Tony, how about you? Tony, did you freeze again?
Sorry. Oh dear. Anyway, yes, no, I think in terms of my workflow, the actual workflow itself hasn't changed. You know, what you do hasn't changed at all, but it's just where you do it has changed, I think. And I think I've been quite pleased to see that actually really, you know, I can work from home. There's no need to come to work for all tasks, but there are going to be issues. Well, I mean, I think I've missed my colleagues, so that's been, you know, one aspect to it.
Okay, thank you. Denise?
Not really, just kind of basic procedures in terms of safety. So, for example, doing an X-ray needed a whole new set of risk assessments and how we work with our handling and how many people in the room at a time, that kind of thing. But generally mission, what we're doing and why we're doing it hasn't changed.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, was your institution or will your institution be affected by the redundancies? And how has this changed the situation for you? I'm going to start with Colin.
I work for myself, so no redundancies, but
okay.
Some of the clients I have, I'm aware of quite a lot of redundancies in the cultural heritage sector. I'm aware of one department of 6, which is now 1. So
oh, wow.
I would imagine that's going to happen quite a lot across the board. Maybe not at some of the larger institutions, but certainly at some of the middle ranking ones, I would have thought. Yeah, that's the picture that from traveling around the last 3 months that I'm getting.
Okay, thank you. Tony?
We've not had any redundancies because we're all civil servants, so we've carried on and not been furloughed. So we've obviously heard that other institutions have closed.
Okay, Denise?
Yeah, no, we've been really lucky. We weren't furloughed and there haven't been any redundancies at the gallery, but National Gallery Company, they did furlough staff and they have had redundancies. So that's in the shops and the restaurants and in the offices as well, editors, publishers. So they've suffered quite badly. And for now, we're okay. We'll see how it goes.
Magic?
We had quite a lot of people being furloughed, but there were no redundancies so far. And in general, the university's response was pretty good, especially at the beginning of the pandemic where things were very uncertain. People who had temporary contract finishing during the lockdown were extended the contract until July. People who were working through temporary employment services, the agency which works for the university to recruit people temporarily, they also maintained the contracts on the same basis that the people were employed until the end of July. So that was kind of well supported. Now, obviously, there is lots of questions about the future, and primarily we are looking into cutting non-staff costs so far and not filling in the new positions. So, but there are no redundancies yet.
And Gwen?
Within the university, they quite quickly ran a voluntary severance scheme. So various members of the wider library and university took that. And so our librarians told us that that has mitigated potential redundancies that may have come with the new restructure that's coming in the spring now. But from what we've been told, the imaging department are very sort of safe with the new focus on digitisation. So that's good news for us, but not necessarily across the board within the university.
Okay, Thank you. And in the interest of time, I have 2 more questions, but I'm going to combine them into one. And I'm going to ask each of you to let me know what your biggest lesson learned from this experience was, and just a simple yes or no as to whether you'll have a contingency plan for another lockdown or similar in the future. And I'll go ahead and start with Tony. Tony, are you frozen again?
You'd think after 6 months I'd get used to this, wouldn't you? But anyway, okay, clearly not. I think in terms of lessons learned, clearly it's that everyone's actually really kind to everyone, and there's been a lot of kindness shown by everyone, so that's been a good thing. And in terms of, you know, what we might do in terms of our workflow and stuff, what I think people are going to be working from home more, which does have a knock-on effect for, certainly here in central London, for local businesses and stuff, if more people are staying at home. So it's all going to be, you know, quite, yeah, it's just going to be very interesting. Well, not interesting, but it's all going to be, you know, yeah, we just don't know at this stage really. But yeah, things aren't quite going to be the same again, I don't think.
Thank you. Gwen?
I think very similar to Tony. I was going to say what great people I work with, and what a great team I have, and how flexible they've been, and how willing to adapt and change. And I just think that's really powerful and really helpful, and like really supportive of each other. That, I mean, not that I didn't know it already, but that's the biggest thing I think that's kind of come out of this for me. And I think similar again to Tony, that, you know, this has taught us that we only need to be in there to actually take the pictures, and we can work in other ways and work from home. And our director was saying from the beginning, things will never be the same again. And I think that's a positive thing. I think it's a move into working in different ways that can be more beneficial for people's well-being and work-life balance. So for us, I think that's hopefully will remain a good thing, but we'll see how things go over the next few months.
Thank you. Magic?
Yeah, similarly, have a great, talented team, and we learned, I think, a bit more about each other also, and other colleagues from other departments. Suddenly you meet them in their own home setting and see what pictures they have on the walls, what books they have on the shelves behind them, this kind of things. Oh, who's trying to learn ukulele, you know, this kind of thing, and the tea times and how important they are for well-being. That was also great. Virtual tea times, although not the same, still good. But also access to digitized collections. So even though we could do some picture library image processing remotely, the internet access, sometimes the speed of the internet wasn't good enough, and that still you know, didn't allow to do everything because we're dealing with the heavy media. And the other one was, yeah, exactly as some people said already, there is this work flexibility. We can do more of it, and more confident that that will work as well, and maybe that also supports the well-being a bit more, that you have this the different arrangement, and you can work with that. Yeah, I think also realizing how important is the access to the collections, that without it we are very, very limited, and even thinking about the planning for the future trouble which might occur, we just tighten up security and maybe prioritize the access for photographers as well, because this is what's important.
Colin?
Yeah, pretty much similar to what everyone else has said. I mean, I hope going forward that upper management realise that actually they can trust their staff to work hard when they're not in the office. I mean, I left the gallery 9 years ago, and even before that, I was asking them if I could work. There was no reason for me to be in the office most of the time. and I was told, oh no, people wouldn't do their work. I think one of the things this has proved is people, in my opinion, work harder. You know, as managers, you can assess how much work people have done in the past. So you can manage what people are doing. And when people are at home, yes, they do tend to work better. They work harder. And yeah, you don't have that thing that Tony said, like, you know, having to get out of bed and sort of like take the tube in, take the train in. I mean, I roll out of bed, I do it a couple of hours work, then I come down, have some breakfast, listen to the radio. I tend to work between 6 and 8 in the evenings for four evenings a week because there's nothing on telly. Kids are doing their homework. And if you look at it that way, four evenings a week, 6 to 8, that's a day's work, which means I can go out and do what I like on Friday. You know, people work, most people actually are trustworthy and hardworking. And if you allow them to get on and do things, they'll and, you know, and you give them a good lifestyle to do it, they'll work better. And I hope management will actually not look at this as, oh well, we did it for 6 months and then go back to the old ways. I'm hoping that they'll trust us all to get on and do a good job for them. Yeah. And would I change anything? No.
Okay. Thank you. Denise?
Yeah, basically the same as what everybody else has said, but I agree with Colin. I think it is, in a way, you do get more done when you're at home. You haven't got the distractions of people coming in and talking to you. You can just focus on what you've got to do. And people should trust us, and hopefully they will from now on. I personally don't see why I should ever go back to being 5 days a week in the office, because I can do so much from home. So I'd be quite happy to go back part-time. But also, one last thing, I'm kind of hoping that during lockdown, people have appreciated what we do more, because the only way to see the collections have been through our work, seeing the images on the websites, etc. So I think we have, our appreciation has gone up a little bit of what we do and how much they rely on what we do. So hopefully that's a takeaway for management as well.
Well, I'd like to thank my panel. You've all been wonderful participants. Thank you very much for being a part of this. I'd also like to thank Ahfap for this opportunity, and to remind people that while Ahfap is a professional organization, it's also a supportive community with valuable resources which may be of help during times like this. If you're not already a member, please consider joining. And finally, stay safe and healthy, wash your hands, wear a mask, and be kind to each other. Thank you. And now, if we have a few minutes, we'd like to turn the floor over to questions from the audience.
So yeah, thank you everyone for contributing. There's been one question by George Morrison, who asked, did the panel have any difficulties in asking staff to return to work, and how did they reassure them regarding safety and traveling?
Yeah, sorry. Shall I go ahead? Sorry. Yeah, there were a lot of risk assessments, and it has been quite tricky because everybody's different in the department. Some people more cautious than others. Some people don't want to use public transport. Others don't mind. So it's changed along the way, and it has been quite challenging at times, negotiating with the gallery and management and HR what should or shouldn't be done, and individuals within the department. But we've talked to each other, we've come to compromise, and I would never ask anybody to come in if they felt unsafe or to do anything that they weren't comfortable with. So that's the bottom line, really. If you're not comfortable with it, I wouldn't make you do it. So people can stay at home, they can refuse. If it's on health grounds and it's valid, then I totally support that.
Okay. Magic?
In Cambridge, we had very good central guidelines in terms of that. So first of all, facilities management did the groundwork in preparing the building and assuring that it's all safe, having more cleaning, having to clean the entire building every day thoroughly before opening to people, etc., etc. Then in terms of returning people to work, yeah, there was a separate risk assessment for every person as well, and there were different options. If anything was of a concern, there would be always work around it.
Anybody else have a response? Gwen?
Yeah, very similar to the two. The university had a really clear guidance on risk assessing the staff and the building, making the building safe. And the other thing to add was that what was really great was actually, because Imogen took priority in terms of providing access for researchers along with the reading room, the building's got a 20-person limit to be allowed in, and the service teams get the priority on that. So there's very, very few people in the building, which I think helps make people feel safe. But I'd just like to reiterate what the others have said as well, that we wouldn't make anybody do anything that they didn't feel comfortable with. And it was very much a conversation with each individual as to what was going to work for them.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Sorry, I'm afraid I might have to cut you short because we're already 5 minutes over, and I think people will have a limited lunchtime break and probably have to go back to work. So there's been one more question by Kevin Percival. I will forward that question to all of you, and then maybe you can get back to him. I will just quickly share a screen, just so that if you do have any questions for the panel members, then you can have their email addresses here. I hope can everyone see this? Yeah, can I just have a thumbs up from Kristen if everyone can see this? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, cool. So yeah, here are the email addresses. Obviously, we have recorded this, so you can also find these email addresses in the recording. I'm also just very briefly going to share something else with you, which is what we have on the Ahfap website. So here, obviously, we have the conference program, and as you can see, we've got all the conference programs online now, and I really think we have a great program for the next couple of weeks. So do check this out and book your ticket on Eventbrite. And also, we have a wonderful blog online where a lot of people from across the sector kind of have a very similar discussion to the one we had on the panel. So I highly recommend checking this one out. And that leaves me with thanking everyone, obviously everyone on the panel, Gwen especially, sorry I forgot to mention you earlier. So yeah, thank you everyone. Also, obviously, thank you so much to Richard, Ivor, Steve, Ian. They've spent so many years on the committee doing amazing work, and I really wish we could just all go to the pub and yeah, and have a drink. But as soon as it's safe to do, we will have a little bit of a celebration because yeah, they've spent, they've done so much amazing work for the committee. So I think that deserves a massive thank you. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining. It's been really enjoyable knowing that everyone is on there, even though we have just black screens. But it's been really nice seeing everyone. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye.